Hello everyone and welcome back to the Crowdfunding Roundup. This is the Friday edition in which we first look at some campaigns. This will be the campaigns that launched on Wednesday and Thursday, and then because it's the Friday edition, we will look forward to next week and I'll handpick some campaigns that'll be completing their funding that I think you might not want to miss out on. So I think we have about 6 campaigns in the front half and about 5 campaigns in the second half. As always, I bookmark my videos, so if you're looking for something specific, you can just scroll over the bar, see what chapter, what game, what campaign you're looking for, and go right to that section. And also, if there's a campaign that you're specifically interested in, you can go down into the description, click on the link, and it'll take you right to that campaign. Without any further ado, let's get moving and look at these 6 campaigns that have launched in the last 2 days. Now, the first of these is for a game called 2D6 Dungeon, a classic dungeon crawler solo player game. It's a little odd for me to cover this because this one is in a really fuzzy gray area. It's almost more of a role-playing game, and I don't really cover those. But it did get an entry over at Board Game Geek, and it's kind of, although it is kind of like a role-playing game, it's also a roll and write game, and it's very self-contained as a roll and write game, even though it's very much like Dungeons and Dragons. It's doing something that's a little more roll and writey. So for me, that and the fact that it does have an entry on Board Game Geek kind of pushed it into me including it. So let's take a quick look at this one. We can see that it had a funding goal of about $1,200. They're at $6,600 right now, so they're funded. The campaign's going to finish up on April 11th, and if we look down a little bit further, we can see that it will deliver in May of 2023. Now, if we look and see what else Toby Lancaster has put out, and this is DR Games is the publisher here. He's done basically roll and write type stuff. So these are the games he's put out through Kickstarter before. There's this a solo roll and write game, Dark Force Incursion Expansions. He had this one, Expansionist, a tabletop game for pioneers, canceled. He also had Trade Nation canceled. He did one called Rad Zone, another roll and write. This War Within RPG, Rad Zone Totality, roll and write RPG, and Drop Pods, a single player RPG. So he's kind of straddling the line in general with all of his games between roll and writes and RPGs. Now, the reason I bring this up, though, is usually because if you look at their past history, you have a better idea, how much risk is involved in this. I'd say, he hasn't really done any board games per se, but he has done some of these roll and write RPG hybrids. That does seem to be his, sweet spot, and that's what we're looking at here with this campaign. Also, because it's very much print and play, there's very little risk involved. You don't have to get things shipped to you physically. Now, as we see over on Board Game Geek, there is, an entry for it. It is a 1-player game, so it's a solo game, dice, fantasy, fighting, dice rolling, paper and pencil, and solo solitary game. And it's described like this. 2D6 Dungeon is a classic-style dungeon crawl, print-and-play, roll-and-write game designed for solo play. It is a you explore randomly generated dungeons. Oh, okay. I see. There's a grammar error here. They started to say it is a something, and then decided, okay. You explore randomly generated dungeons, fight monsters, and collect treasures as you gain experience and levels and strive to become a legendary adventurer. Every adventure and dungeon is unique. You are an adventurer who has that special quality which marks you out as exceptional. Hey, you have heard that there is a dungeon located nearby, and after searching, have discovered the entrance. This is your opportunity to make your fortune, and although you know the challenges ahead will be difficult, you sense you have what it takes to become a legend. Okay, so here's what this looks like. You've got these sheets, which as anyone can see are very much, Dungeons and Dragons type maps. And it says how to play. In 2D6 Dungeon, you have a character sheet which you fill out. You then enter the dungeon and randomly generate each room as you encounter them, using the specially designed generation system, and then roll on a table to establish the type of room. Here you will encounter enemies that you must defeat. Deeper you venture as your character gains levels and treasure. For every level you pass, you come closer to becoming a legend. So I think this is pretty cool. It's kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons module, but it's for one person, and it's a solo mode, really, where you're going to be, you know, rolling dice to fill the rooms and then just kind of going through it with one character. So you can take a look at the rules here if you want. The levels of the human ancestry dungeon. 10 levels are included with the Kickstarter so that you can try and conquer the dungeon. So these are the levels. And then there's just different forms that you can get this in, okay? There's the character sheets they're going to be using. They're very D&D-like. So it's simple, but it looks pretty neat to me. And I think they're achieving what they set out to do with this. So if we look quickly over here at the pledge levels, for $8 you get the digital version. So these are the files, the PDF files. It's basically a print and play version. If you pledge this level, which is $19, they're going to kind of bind it up and give it to you in physical form. So you also get the digital copy with this, but you'll get a paperback edition. Now, okay, there we go. So that's another thing, right? This is coming out of the UK. So the pledge itself is $19, but shipping is £7. So that's almost, you know, half the cost of the game in shipping. So all told, this pledge level would be $27. So it's $8 in shipping. And then they have a hardback edition. And let's see. Then they have this pledge where you're getting the hardback and the paperback, and then they have a version in a faux leather book. So, I mean, it's the same stuff, but you can get the print and play, you can get the very nice faux leather book, and everything in between. And I don't think I need to go through all the pledge levels on this. Just know that the most expensive one, let's see, is $85 to the US. So you're looking at, depending on what level you get, somewhere between $8 and $80. But that is 2d6, and for those of you who are looking for, you know, an old school Dungeons and Dragons campaign that you can play by yourself as a roll and write, this seems like it will fit the bill there. Next we go to Beverage, worker placement at its thirstiest. Now, this had a funding goal of $15,000. They're at $9,000, and I always say that campaigns need to get about 2/3 of their funding goal in the first 48 hours if they want to be sure that they will fund. And are we at that with this campaign? That would be about $10,000. So they're not quite there, but you know they're right on the line. So this may or may not fund at this point. The campaign will end on April 9th, and it's going to deliver in September of 2023. Now, as we can see, there's only one pledge level. Also, this is in, what, yen, I think? So let's see, where is this coming from? The publisher, yep, is located in Japan. They've only done one other campaign previously, and that was for a Japanese version of Imperial Spells and Steam. So, you know, for me, this one is going to be a higher level risk just because it's a publisher that hasn't really done that much. And because that other campaign, I didn't really look at it, but it was all written up in Japanese. So I think that it may not have even been like available to Western audiences, which means that in the delivery of this to Western audiences, they're going to be doing some things they haven't done before, shipping to places they haven't shipped before. But let's take a quick look at it. So that's what it looks like on the table there. Some of the assets. See, some of this is still in Japanese. Little wooden markers. And there's a kind of a cool vending machine made out of, it looks like probably cardboard, and it's like a token distributor. You've got your board here, you got some tokens. Your bottle tokens, those are wood. Okay, so we're getting a look at what the game looks like here. All right, let's take a look at this over on Board Game Geek. Beverage is the name of the game. So designed by Konomi Nikaido and with art by Yuto Miura. And for the designer, it's this is the only game the designers designed, but they've designed another version of it previously in 2019. So this is, this was a not as pretty version. And, that probably means that the gameplay is going to be pretty refined, considering this has already been produced once before by this publisher called Konomist. And the artist, this is a first go-round for the artist. All right, now, if we want to see the track record of the publisher, we know that they handled that Japanese version of Imperial Spells and Steam. Let's see what else they've done. So these may just be translations of other games. I'm guessing that's what they are, because these are, like, Kemet is, Madagot. Bull is level 99 games. So yeah, I think they've just done, let's take a quick look here at the overview. Yeah, a Japanese board game publisher. So a lot of the games that they've put out so far seem to be Japanese translations, Japanese versions, and it looks like they did go to Kickstarter with the Imperial Spells and Steam version. So Beverage is their first kind of product game that they're marketing to Western audiences. Now, they say here it is worker placement with a bidding element. Players take on the role of a CEO in a beverage company. You, along with your rivals, have agreed to help fund the creation of a new stadium in your city. However, only the company with the highest reputation will be allowed to sell their drinks inside. A round starts with bidding for how much money you will get to use in a round. The money is then used to pay for actions around the board. Once the local stadium is complete, the game will end. A cutthroat game from Japan. Beverage combines the nostalgic with the modern. So it's listed as being under the categories of economic and industry and manufacturing, and we've got area majority influence, auction and bidding, and worker placement. And here's another kind of look at the game and what it's going to look like. So you've got some, looks like some player screens here with some hidden information, because there's that auction bidding element, and then also worker placement. So that's the game in a nutshell. And as we said, there's only one pledge level, which is $68, and then shipping to the US is going to be $20. So if this is something you are curious about, you're looking at $88 for the whole package. Moving on, we've got The Hunt, and this campaign is over on Gamefound. And this is being published by an outfit called Salt and Pepper, who have previously done a campaign for this game called Resist. Now, both of these are war games. Let's just go back to this. Here we go. The Hunt, I know it's designed, or at least co-designed, by Matthias Kramer, who was at least one of the designers on Watergate. And I think this probably has... Let's just look up him. Designer? Am I spelling it wrong? Wait a second. What have I done wrong here? Okay. Well, let's check out the Gamefound page first. So the setup says, September 1939, the commander of the Admiral Graf Spee receives the order to sink as many British freight ships as possible in the South Atlantic. The objective is to intercept the ships crossing the Atlantic and prevent supplies from reaching the UK and other destinations. The plan seems to work in the first months. Within a few weeks, the Admiral Graf Spee sinks 9 freight ships and sends almost 50,000 gross register tons to the seabed. The gigantic loss put the Army Command in London Whitehall under pressure. In order to protect their freighters in the best possible way, the Admiralty had no choice but to reinforce the English fleet in the South Atlantic by sending 3 cruisers in what is known as the Battle of River Plate. So that is what you're fighting, is going to be the Battle of River Plate. Here it is, Matthias Kramer, and I was trying to spell it with a K. Nice job, Brian. Okay, Matthias Kramer. And I left out an H. There we go. Okay, so here's our designer, or is it a co-designer? Let me close out of some of the things we don't need. Yeah, so Matthias Kramer and Engin Kunter, with art by Albert Montez. And let's see, so Kramer's highest rated games include Watergate, Glenmore 2 Chronicles. That's also a very well-regarded game. Rococo. Rococo is awesome. Let's see. So he's a co-designer on Rococo. Lancaster and the original Glenmore. Craftwagon also. So Craftwagon, Glenmore, and Watergate are probably his biggest hits. And he was a solo designer on Watergate. So that is probably a very good representation of what you're going to be getting with The Hunt. But let's see. It does list The Hunt over here. Okay. So let's check out okay, so Engine Hunter. Engine Hunter. This is their first published game. And the artist, I feel like I know this artist. Albert Montez. Okay, so he also did the art for Resist, which was the other game from Salt and Pepper. He's also worked on Luna Capital, Dungeon Raiders, a few other things. Okay, so over here, if we look at the category for The Hunt, we've got bluffing, card game, deduction, nautical, war game, World War II. It is a campaign battle card driven game with hidden movement and multi-use cards. It's also a war game for 2 players. So this is a head-to-head war game, which also kind of begs the comparison with Watergate, except instead of playing a political game, you are actually playing a war game between the British and, here we go, an asymmetrical duel where one player will assume the leadership of the British Royal Navy while the other player will represent the German Kriegsmarine. Each player has their own goals. In order to win, the German side must stay hidden from the British while attempting to sink 5 freight ships. Instead, the player leading the British must hunt down and fight Admiral Graf Spee in a final naval battle, in which case the side that ends up with lesser damage wins. Will the Royal Navy be able to take advantage of their numerical superiority, or will the Kriegsmarine be the ones who, with their cunning and refined strategy, manage to overthrow their rival? So here's a look at the art from the game, and also they're playing the game. So there's a look at the game on the table. And I really like this art. This reminds me, well, it kind of reminds me of the Corto Maltese comics I used to read back in the 90s. But I like the art, I like the card art, and I think, if you've played Watergate, that's probably a pretty good litmus test for what this game is going to be like. Now, there are several editions in different languages. They're coming in at €23. And I don't think there's a way on here to determine that the way there is easily often on Kickstarter. So let's just. So I believe it's €12 shipping. So 35 for the whole thing, which is basically $38 to the US, continental US. That is inclusive of shipping. And this is going to ship in September 2023 or deliver in 2023. And if we go over here, we see that the campaign will end April 4th. So that's what we're looking at with The Hunt. Got this war game, multi-use cards, not unlike Watergate. And then all of these higher pledges are just for multiple copies of the game. Yeah, so it's €12 for shipping, which brings the total to €35 or $38 US. So that is our third campaign of the week. All right, so they had a funding goal of €12,000. They're at €25,000, so they're funded. They're fine. This is our last launch from Wednesday. Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, the card game. This is back on Kickstarter. Now, this one had a funding goal of $5,500. They're at $2,500, so they're only halfway there, which means it's probably unlikely to fund. Although, with a smaller funding goal like this, you never know. If you get, a surge of backers at some point, it's a small enough funding goal that they could push them over the top. So this campaign will end on March 29th. And it's being run by Redispiel, which is out of Germany. And they have run one campaign before for this game called Sauria: The Last Artifacts. Now, I'm just curious, since that's their only thing. It's a 2021 game listed as, and it's got a pretty decent score of an 8.0. It's a lighter game. Okay, so that's kind of their one, as we would say in the real estate game, representative comp. All right. So let's look back at this. Now, this is a card game, and let's just go right to Ichabod Jones over here. Okay, so it's for 3 to 4 players. That's kind of important, just to know that there's no solo game. You can't play it with 2 players. That's not uncommon for card games, and usually for auction and bidding games, or like in negotiation games, you kind of need that. It's harder to play with 2 players. But this is for 3 to 4 players. It's a card game, fantasy fighting, hand management, matching, prisoner's dilemma, which is usually, I mean, that's based on what the other players do, which that's probably partly why they need the 3 players, semi-cooperative game, and a trader game. So a psychopath escapes from a mental asylum and becomes a monster hunter during the apocalypse with the unwelcome help of the voice in his head. A story about perception turned into a game inspired by the prisoner's dilemma. Fast-paced and easy to learn with multiple layers of strategic finesse. In this exciting monster fighting game based on the hit comic book series Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter by Russell Nohelty, you're never sure who you're really fighting against. Work together to build up epic attacks, to take a risk and turn against your allies? Are you killing monsters, or is it all in your head? Do you hear that voice? Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter card game might seem like a cooperative game, but it really isn't. Battle monsters cooperatively by playing the right cards, but in the end, you're all by yourself scoring points depending on your remaining hand cards. Combine 2 copies of the game to play up to 8 players. All right. So as we said, this may or may not fund. It's only halfway there. Campaign ends on March 29th. If it does fund, and this does happen, they're planning on delivering the game in December 2023. All right, let's take a look at pledges. So we've got the card game here for $19, and I believe that this is really the only pledge level with the game. If we go up in pledge levels, so if you've got multiple copies of the game, if you wanted it for 8 players, this one also comes with an ebook. Both of these pledge levels comes with an ebook. And then if we go up, it's kind of concentrating more on some of the comic book stuff. So this pledge level will get you P&P version of Ichabod Jones and a P&P version of their previous game Sauria, but then you're going to get 4 volumes of Ichabod Jones, or 4 copies of that volume. We go up a little bit more. We hit a level with multiple copies, assigned prototype card. Normally when they do things like this, it's limited, so this is only 40 copies worth. And then we've got a pledge level here with Monster Hunter and Sauria. 2 copies of Ichabod Jones and the ebook. This one's limited to 100 copies, and then we've got a retail pledge. And then we've got an all-in, and the all-in's going to come with 4 copies of the comic book, physical comic book, 2 copies of the card game, and a copy of Sauria. So let's just, for curiosity's sake, these are estimated costs, very simplified estimated cost. So 1 or 2 copies of the game is going to be, to the US, €9. So this is more than that, I think. It depends about how they're kind of attributing the physical comic book. Let's see, if I click on it, will it autofill? It will not. So let's assume that this is €9 for this, which means this big pledge will be $180. That's very expensive. And it is coming from, where did we say? From Germany? Yeah, from Germany. And it's a smaller publisher, so sometimes that's where you really notch up the shipping, although the shipping isn't the problem here. The overall pledge price is. But you're getting 4 copies of the comic book, 2 copies of the game, and a copy of Sauria. If we look at the simple pledge, the one that just comes with 1 copy of the game, which is really all that you need, but you also get this ebook, that one will be, with shipping, $39. And if we kind of look up at what this is, we have not done that yet. So, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the comic book. If you are, maybe this means more to you. It says 3 to 8 players, but you would need 2 copies of the game to do 8 players. So if you just have 1 copy of the game, it's a 3 to 4 player game. And it's basically a pretty simple card game. Semi-cooperative card game. Battle monsters cooperatively by playing the right cards. Defeated monsters score points all for yourself based on your remaining hand cards. So that's about all that they're telling us about the gameplay. I would think that, you know, this is really only going to appeal to fans of the comic book. Especially because the gameplay is so thin and they don't even really describe it. I'm trying to see if there's like a rule book linked. I don't think there is. Okay, so that's really all we have to go on. I mean, this would not be a back for me. That's all I'll say. I need more. I certainly, if the game is that kind of thin, I at least need more description. And there's a video here. Should we watch this? Let's watch it. Maybe it'll tell us something important.
So, you've just escaped from a mental asylum, right? Well then, let's fight those monsters together. Or is it all just in your head? Forget about the voice you hear. This game might seem cooperative. It really isn't. But if you have no idea who you're fighting against, what's your best bet? Based on the hit comic book series, Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter, the card game. You're playing cards of matching colors to defeat monsters. The better you work together, the stronger your attacks will be. Defeated monsters count for the final scoring, but the closer the game approaches its end, the more you are all by yourself. Because in the end, all that matters are defeated monsters and your remaining hand cards. Oh, and if you really hear a voice in your head, nothing of that matters to you. Will you be the one to hear the voice next? Find out on Kickstarter now.
Okay, so that's probably enough time spent with Ichabod Jones. Now we go to the 2 campaigns that launched on Friday. 5 games from legendary designers Phil Walker Harding, Mike Fitzgerald, Alf Seegert, and Sid Sackson. Now, Sid Sackson designed a lot of games back in the day. Sid Sackson has since passed away. If we go a little further down into this, they talk about this a bit. Okay. The brief version of the backstory of these games begins with a trip that the EGG, that's Eagle Griffin Games team, and friends took to the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York 6 years ago. We read about 20 years of Sid Sackson's diaries and noted the games he was particularly enthused about, which had never been published. We then combed through the Strong's archives of Sackson's rules and prototypes and found about a dozen titles that gave us enough information to consider revitalizing them and developing them into currently publishable titles. More details are covered on the box and in the rules about this process. The end result, 6 years later, is this anthology of 6 titles, most of which have never been published before. We think they demonstrate Sid's creative and innovative genius and the variety of games he designed and redesigned and the mechanics that he developed, which were later used by many more designers in more recent games. Now, before I go forward, let's go back up top. So they have a funding goal here of $15,000. They're currently at $6,700, which is not great, especially for a pretty well-known publisher like Eagle Griffin Games. This means they may not fund. If they do, the campaign is going to complete on March 31st, and let's just see, it'll be delivering in October 2023. So let's just take a look at the games themselves. So there's kind of 2 different collections here. The Sackson Legacy Collection. There's this red volume and a blue volume. Each one of them has 3 games. So the red volume is going to include this game called Cinema. This is a new game. It says here the Eagle Griffin Games team found Cinema while digging through Sid's collection of diary notes about his best games that had never been published. The Eagle Griffin team, led by Emerson Masucci, who you probably know as the designer of like the Century games, analyzed and developed the current game rules to bring cinema to life. So this is for 3 to 5 players. And then they've got Dig Site, which has existed before, so they've kind of given it a new name, a little bit of a new theme, but it had been published previously under the name Corner. And let me just look up Corner. So that came out back in 1974. See, I mean, look at this. It almost looks like that old game, probably from around the same time, Mastermind. But that's Corner. That came out from Ravensburger way back. Well, at some point it came out from Ravensburger, right? But I don't know if that's the 74 edition, although from the box it looks like it could be. Okay, and then we've got this game called Bowling Solitaire, which first appeared in a book called A Gamut of Games, originally published in 1969. So these are the 3 games that are in the red volume. And then the blue volume has these 3 games. So I'm the Boss, the Dice Game. I'm the Boss, the Dice Game, and Banana Blitz are 2 games the Eagle Griffin team found while digging through Sid's prototype. So these are more unpublished games, more finds. Banana Blitz is the one over here on the right side. It's kind of a card game. The name and gameplay of Banana Blitz comes from Sid's notes exactly as they were written. The original name, I'm the Boss, the Dice Game, was Deal Me In. So that's this game. It was originally called Deal Me In, but they're changing it to I'm the Boss, the Dice Game. Now, he also had a game called I'm the Boss and I'm the Boss, the card game. The original game felt almost like a finished project when Sid left it in 1981. His meticulous notes and math in his journal allowed us to recreate the gameplay just as Sid intended. We took some liberties to modernize the artistic design of both games, but we are confident that Sid would have approved of the end result, which we are proud to present today. So you get these 2 games in the blue volume, and this game called Scope was brought to the attention of Eagle Griffin by game designer Joe Huber. Sid originally created this never-before-published large group game for a group in a New York home for veterans. Little has been added to Sid's original concept and rules for this game. So I haven't looked into this, but I'm guessing if it's a big group game, I mean, now we can do this with roll and writes. You see large numbers of players playing roll and writes. But perhaps it's maybe bingo-like, I'm thinking. So those are 2 of the kind of offerings, of the 5 offerings. And then we have 3 other games, 1 each by Phil Walker Harding, Mike Fitzgerald, and Alf Seegert. So Phil Walker Harding's contribution is this game called Tanis. It's a 2-player game. And it looks like this. A unique tile digging game for 2 players. The game begins with 40 beautiful wooden domino-sized tiles randomly placed in the custom-made box. These tiles represent pieces of scrolls that the players are trying to reassemble in this fast-playing competitive game. It almost looks a little bit like Mahjong. Let's see. Right. Now, let's just look over. A lot of people know Phil Walker Harding, whether you know it or not, because we're going to look at his games quickly. Okay, so Phil Walker Harding has done Sushi Go Party, Baron Park, Gizmos, Imhotep, the original Sushi Go, Silver and Gold, Cacao, Sushi Roll, Imhotep the Duel, Gingerbread House, Llama Land, Super Mega Lucky Box, one of the adventure games, The Dungeon, Summer Camp, Dungeon Raiders, Fjords. So he's done some other adventure games, My Shelfie. So he's done a lot of stuff. Probably Sushi Go, Baron Park, Gizmos. Those are maybe Silver and Gold. Those are the ones that people probably know the most. Although Summer Camp came out within the last couple of years, and I think that's something that you can find at Target, so people may know that as well. Okay, so that's Phil Walker Harding's contribution. Then we've got Mike Fitzgerald's contribution is Crunch Time. Now, he's the designer behind the 2045 games, Baseball Highlights 2045, Football Highlights 2052. He also worked on Wyatt Earp and the Mystery Rummy games. So this is kind of like Baseball Highlights 2045. It's in that universe, but it's a 2-player game. Baseball Highlights Crunch Time. So for 1 to 2 players, now this is a co-designed with Ian Sebastian Bach and Richard Yaner, and the artist is William Bricker, and he's the Bricker on. Sorry, William Bricker is the artist on the 2045 games. So if you're familiar with baseball highlights, football highlights, that's the same artist. So this game is being described as an abstract strategy sports game with hand management. Can be a solo solitaire game. In Crunch Time, each coach has a team of 5 players. As the coach, you will use your shot cards to set up your plays in several zones on the basketball court. The more players you have undefended in the proper zones, the more points you will score. If one of your players is in a zone that matches your star card, they can make an astounding shot and score extra points. Score more points than your opposing coach to win the game. So these are kind of these simple games which seem to pair really well with Sid Sackson's designs, which, were simpler because they were from an earlier time. Last, we have Alf Seegert's game called A Bard Day's Night. So kind of a play on, the Beatles. For fans of Alf Seegert, the quirky and full of fantasy mind behind the diverse titles Fantastica, Muse, Illumination, and The Road to Canterbury comes the clever new card game. So we've got a new card game here from Alf Seegert. It's a game of bidding, bluffing, and belting out verses. Players compose ballads by putting together verses made of 5 cards. The ballad cards can combine into over 2 million different hilarious sentences, like a one-eyed barn cat charms a lonely vampire who is cursing a vindictive warlock. Hence, because it's, song related, hence the name, I think, being a play on the Beatles. In playing cards, they also receive a reward of onions, tomatoes, or cabbages tossed at them. Using that bounty of food, bards bid on the right to perform each part of the verse for the crowded house of tavern-goers. The winners collect those ballad cards, hoping to have the majority of certain symbols by the end of the game. When playing the game, the bottom of the box also serves as the tavern table, holding extra food cards for those who lose their bids. Play continues until the tavern closes for the night, after which bards are awarded coins for having the majority of each theme. The minstrel with the most coin in their pocket wins. So that is your kind of group of 5 games. Now, if you're wanting to back, different games, you can back tennis for $29, baseball highlights, crunch time for $20, a Bard's Day Night for $22, and then the 2 collections are $29 each. And then there are various other pledges that bundle them together, in different combinations. And if you want both of the Sackson collections, it's $55. If you want all 3 of the non-Sackson games, you're looking at $65. And if you want everything, you're looking at $119. Now, they also have this pledge here, the full Griffin Bookshelf series. So these games are all going to be games in the Bookshelf series. There have been a bunch of these before. I think 26 games previously. So these new games are 27, 28, and 29. And then I believe the Sackson games are not in this series. They're kind of standalone. So this, if you pledge this, you're getting, 29 different games. And also includes all of these expansions too. So, it's a lot of stuff. But this pledge level looks like it does not include the Sackson games. So if you wanted this and the Sackson games, you'd need to add on the Sackson games. However, where does it say on here? I know I saw it before. There's only 10 copies of this. 8 left. Okay. So this is in a very, very small quantity. Now, do they talk about shipping? Here we go. Okay, so if you're getting one game, $9 to $10, that would also include, one of the collections. If you're getting both of the Sackson Legacy collections, $13. If you're getting 3 of the games, including the 3 non-Sackson collections, $13. If you're getting all 5 games, $20. And then if you get that huge collection thing, of which there's only like 8 copies left, $50 in shipping. So for most things, you're going to be paying, $10 to $13. But if you're getting all 5 things, it's $20. So those are kind of your probably key shipping numbers for this campaign. Now I'm thinking, because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of games, we should probably watch the video for this one. So let's go ahead and do that.
Hey, my name is Rachel, and I am Eagle Griffin's online community manager. Today I have the pleasure of introducing not one, but 5 new games for this campaign. To begin with, the first 3 are additions to the Griffin Bookshelf series, so let's jump right in. In A Bard's Day Night, designed by Seegert, you will play as starving musical bards and minstrels working new ballads in taverns, while catching vegetables hurled at you in appreciation. Upon completion of each ballad, players bid the food they collected to claim ownership of each verse. The minstrels who sang about the most popular themes will receive coins, and the musician with the most coins when the tavern closes is the winner. Next is Basketball Highlights Crunch Time, designed by Mike Fitzgerald, Ian Bach, and Richard Yonner. It is a tactical 2-player or solo game where players take to the hardwood basketball court to manage their 5 players using their hand of cards. These cards show what location can score if the offensive coach positions their player in formation, while the defense scrambles to cover in order to block the shots. If left unattended, the offense will rack up points, especially if using their star player. It will be a tug of war to see who scores the most points when the buzzer sounds. The last game that is being added to the Griffin Bookshelf series is Tanis, designed by Phil Walker Harding. It is named after the archaeological site and ancient city in the northeastern region of Egypt, and is a unique tile-digging game for 2 players. In this fast-paced game, players dig and reassemble beautiful domino-sized scrolls in sequential order with matching symbols. Your goal is to create consecutive runs, and the bigger the run, the more points it is worth. The game ends when the last domino is excavated. Finally, I present to you the Sackson Legacy Collection in 2 boxes containing Cinema, Dig Site, Bowling Solitaire, I'm the Boss the Dice Game, Banana Blitz, and Scope. Some of these are reprints of the beloved Sackson titles with a fresh look, and others are never before published designs from Sid's journals. These are highlights of Sid's collections, from the solo card game Bowling Solitaire to the dicey spin-off of the negotiation classic I'm the Boss, to the simple but challenging set collection of Dig Site. Are you excited? Then scroll through the campaign and look at all of these games more in depth. We at Eagle Griffin Games are excited to publish these titles.
All right, so I don't know, gives you a little bit of a look at it, the different games, some of the components, and a couple of the games, I think, a little more insight into some of the gameplay. So this one launched on Thursday, and then the other Thursday launch we have to look at is called Woodland Wizards. This one had a funding goal of almost $14,000, and they're about $7,000. So this is another one that's really on the line. It's kind of fuzzy whether or not it's going to fund, but if I had to hazard a guess, I would say no. And the campaign will end on April 15th. If it does fund, they'll be delivering it in December of 2023. We can see that this is, again, coming out of Germany, and let's see, the publisher is called Wormgold, but it's listed under Alexander Ammer. I remember this one, Pagan Fate of Roanoke, being on Kickstarter before, and that one actually kind of intrigued me. Let's just take a quick look. So it's got a pretty good score on Board Game Geek. It's got an 8.2, which is fairly solid. And it looks like Lucky Duck may have done some distribution here for them. Okay, let's see if I can call up. Let's do year released. Here we go, Woodland Wizards. So this is designed by Alexander Omer, the new game, Woodland Wizards. He's previously done Tome of Calling and Interstellar Mayhem. And I'm just curious now to see. He seems like he's probably the lead here. Yeah, he founded this company, Wormgold. Okay. And it looks like the first game they published was called Robin of Locksley, which was an Uwe Rosenberg design. Interesting. Okay. But for now, they're publishing this card game for 2 to 6 players. It is a deduction fantasy humor game. It's got card play, conflict resolution, deduction, endgame bonuses, player elimination, push your luck, simultaneous action selection, take that, and variable player powers. So I like the art. I think the art on this is really pretty cool. In a long-forgotten forest, surrounded by rolling hills and sparkling streams, a magical tournament is about to begin. The competitors are not your typical wizards, but tiny woodland critters. They harness magic to summon the most majestic creatures in the realm. Welcome to the world of Woodland Wizards, a card game for 2 to 6 players, where you take on the role of one of these powerful sorcerers to win the greatest tournament of them all, the Wilderland Cup. Okay, so we've got 54 cards, including 5 different forms of creatures. And the game on here, as if I remember, is like super simple. Are they going to talk about it? Am I right? The game starts with the wandering phase. On each player's turn, they draw 1 card from the deck to add to their hand. They then play 1 creature from their hand. And, I mean, the art, I think, is pretty great. The instructions are obviously very simple. They're written on there very clear. All creatures have a special ability, which can be one of 3 different types: spells, passive effects, or active effects. And then that's it, right? Additionally to their effect, each creature has a value, which not only counts for the contest score, but also has an end score. At the end of the wandering phase, a contest will start. Beginning with the starting player, each player places a hidden card in front of them. Once all cards are laid down, they get turned over, and their effects are activated in turn order. Only active and passive contest effects are activated. From now on, spell cards only add their value to the contest. Next, the boost phase begins. Similar to the contest phase, every player places a hidden card from their hand to boost their contest creature. The card gets turned, and the effect takes place in player order. Boost rounds are repeated until all the players' cards are used or the players pass. It's an interesting take, I think, on trick taking, right? You're playing 1 card to try to take the trick, but then you're going to play these consecutive cards to boost or, give additional values, additional abilities to the first card. All right, there's 4 rounds in the game. So it's this very simple kind of trick-taking card game, but the unique hook on this is the way all these cards kind of supplement the original card that you're playing for the trick. And it's got really cool art. So this one, unfortunately, it's on a line, I think, as to whether it's going to fund. And if I had to guess, I'd say no. But if you're never charged until the campaign completes and it funds. So if you happen to fund this and it didn't make its funding goal, you're never going to be charged. So it's you can still take a chance and pledge. And there's only 1 pledge level. It is $14 with shipping. Let's see, why is it saying that? Unless it's already putting in the shipping. Let's see, where is the shipping? No. Yes. Okay. So to the rest of the world, it's $10. So that's probably the one hang up for US backers, is that you'd almost be paying as much in shipping as the cost of the game. So the game's $14 and shipping to the US would be $11. So you're looking at, $25 total. Maybe 26. No, wait, 13 plus 10. Yeah, 24 total. All right, so that is the last of the 5 campaigns that have launched in the last 2 days. And now I'm gonna throw up a little title card, and then when I come back, we'll take a look at, I think, 5 campaigns that are completing their funding next week that I just wanted to show you in case these are things that you wanted to back. So we're just gonna look at these in the order that the campaigns are ending. So the first of these is a game called Tether. Their campaign's going to complete on March 21st, which is Tuesday. And this one's a very simple card game. It's for 2 to 4 players, designed by Mark McGee. Eric Hibbler did the art. The publisher is a company called How to Steam Broccoli, and it's a hand management card game. So this one is, double their funding goal of $7,500. They're totally funded. And essentially how this works is you've got these astronaut cards, and if you notice in the two corners, the numbers are kind of inverted depending on which side you're on. So you're going to be playing these cards out, and let me see if I got a shot of the tableau. You'll be building this tableau. So, you can kind of build on the number. So, an 18 could lead to a 19. And so if you're on one side of the table, you can kind of build the tableau a certain way, going from one number to another, but then that number will be flipped the other way for the player across from you, and they'll be able to build off of that number in a different direction. So I think I really like kind of multi-use cards like this. It feels like a very simple, puzzly card game. And Monique and Naveen here did a playthrough on Before You Play. They're great. I think if you want to see gameplay, this would be a great place to go. And yeah, very simple, very light card game, but some pretty cool art and, a pretty inspired, I think, unique mechanism. Now, if you're considering backing this one, there's a print and play available for $6. The standard version of the game is available for $15 plus shipping, which is, what's shipping going to be? Okay, in the US, we're looking at $6, so $21 for Tether. Or there's a deluxe edition, and that you can get for $26 with shipping. And there's this one with a voice recording, which is kind of interesting. That's a lot more money, though. So they describe the gameplay this way. Astronauts love floating around in space, but not all by themselves. Tether them together so they don't drift through the galaxy alone. Tether is a card game about connecting astronauts together for 2 players or teams. The game uses a mirror deck, which means that each card has a 2-digit number on it, and when you rotate the card 180 degrees, the digits swap places. For example, the card with 18 shows an 81 from the other direction. Every number from 0, 1 to 98 is in the deck. During the game, you tether astronauts together if they have consecutive numbers. Because players see a different number on each card, they have different connections available, leading to a highly interactive asymmetrical challenge. So here it is, the standard game. The keep score with pen and paper version includes 53 mirrored cards and a rulebook. The deluxe game includes 53 mirrored cards, 2 planisphere dials for keeping score, and a rulebook. Plus you'll receive the full color print and play files. So the real big difference then is that in the deluxe version, you're just going to get these score-keeping dials. All right, so that completes the campaign on Tuesday, funds on Tuesday. From there, we go to an Age Contrived. You can see I actually backed this one. And I was considering canceling my pledge, but I think I'm going to keep it. I was on the fence with this one and the Curse of Candelabria, which funded last week, and I decided not to back the Curse of Candelabria. It's an area control game, the Curse of Candelabria I'm talking about now, and I do have some other ones like that. I have the Kemet. I went all in on Kemet from a couple years ago on Kickstarter. And I have Yucatan coming, and Yucatan is going to be the first game in a 3-game series, and the next game, I think it's called Galactic Renaissance, is launching in a week or 2. So I decided, I'm going to stick with Kemet and Yucatan and check out Galactic. It's either Renaissance or Resistance when that launches. But Curse of Candelabria was pretty expensive for the all-in, so I decided not to do that one. And because I wasn't doing that one, I think I'm going to stick with an Age Contrived. Anyway, this one will complete its funding on Thursday, March 23rd. You can see that they had a funding goal of $30,000. They are well over that, so this is definitely funding. This is a first-time publisher, so there's some risk involved there. And you've got a few different pledge levels. You've got the core edition, which is $65. It includes the core version of the game, stretch goals, the Divine Winds module, and the World Tree Monument, which is a Kickstarter limited thing. So if this eventually goes to retail, that monument will not be included in the retail copies of the game. So you've got the core version right here. That's what it looks like. You've got these kind of character miniatures, but you've also got some of these sort of cardboard buildings that'll be around the game board that you'll be interacting with. And you've got that World Tree Monument, which is Kickstarter only, and the Divine Winds module. Now, if you go up to the Collector's Edition, which is this one, you're going to get these player boards that are mechanical and steel. Otherwise, in this version, you've just got kind of cardboard player boards. Now, you've got these little... I guess they look kind of like the tiles in Azul, somewhat. And so you'll be slotting them into the player boards and moving them around. If you're using, the core edition, the base game, the standard version, you're just going to place them on there and kind of move them around. But if you have these mechanical steel boards, you'll actually slide them in through the side, and then they'll be sort of locked in place. So, I mean, there's more going on here, component-wise, which is why there's, this big jump in price, $34. And I think that's like really the main difference is these kind of mechanical player boards. Also with this version, you'll get a game tray storage system. Right. Okay. And then you can go up to the Founders Edition here, where you'll get both copies of the player boards and... Whoops. What else will you get? You'll get these Divine Wind tokens that you play with here. They kind of have a nicer version of these. Let's see if they mention it somewhere. Yeah, here's what you're getting in the core. There's the Collector's Edition, and here's the Founders Edition. And yeah, for this version, you get these. They're kind of like enamel painted. Almost like enamel pins, right? But they're not. There's no pins, but they're like these enamel painted versions. And you'll be getting your miniatures for the game ink washed, and you'll be getting this Ad Infinitum expansion, which I think allows you to play it kind of like a campaign. It allows you to go for different goals, and then you can string together, I think, games. So that's what you get at each of those 3 pledge levels. And then if you want to look at shipping as well, so if you're doing the core with shipping, it would be in the continental US $85. The Collector's Edition would be $124, and the Founders Edition would be $144. Is that right? 144. So I think, it's not super expensive. It didn't get anywhere near like the all-in for the Curse of Candelabria. And there are a few different versions. So if this is something that you're interested in, hopefully you can find your price point. Now, as far as what it is, Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Go did a really good video, that kind of gameplay video that explains it. But let's just look through the gifts here. So there are these magic monuments that are going to be around the board. Inspire your followers to construct wondrous monuments in honor to the gods. Each monument is a magnetic construct that you build piece by piece. Resource programming. So this is kind of the heart of the game. You're going to have these tiles, these cards and these tiles that you'll be slotting into your player boards. So I say cards, but it's almost like one kind of tile. And then as you take actions, you'll use different versions of these tiles to do things with, and the design on them is different. It's kind of hard to see in this, but the design on these little tiles is different. And so whichever ones you draft and use and place on these sort of card tiles will allow you to take different actions. And there's a whole engine building element to this. Action chaining. On an action's turn, use your programmed energy tokens to take as many actions as you can afford. Stop anytime to stay flexible for your next turn. And then there's going to be some player interaction as well, and some asymmetric powers. And I believe there's also a solo mode in this, which is good because the gameplay is pretty deep from what I've seen, pretty complex. And so I think it may be harder to get to the table with a lot of players. It may be a lot to teach. So the ability to play it solo, I think, is good. So that way you can really get your money's worth and play it by yourself if you want to, when you want to. A fantasy Euro game of engine building and resource programming. You play as a god in the Eldranic pantheon, where you are only as powerful as the mortals of this unstable world believe you are. Your goal is to establish yourself as the pantheon's prevailing god by securing mortal belief as you advance the mortal realm from its age of darkness into civilization. Each player receives a character board and a transmutation device, which they use to channel their energy into the mortal realm. Energy is how a god exerts its will and is used to construct monuments, claim new tiles, and accomplish lasting achievements. Bind your energy for endgame scoring and unlock new energy to replenish your reserves. The game ends when the last monument is complete, at which point the player with the most points wins. There are 2 types of turns with no rounds or phases. On a player's turn, they must either charge their transmutation device and program it openly, or use its energy to take as many actions as they have already programmed. Information is open, and the only luck is in the shuffling of tiles to set up the game. Player choices determine how the game unfolds. The game features unlockable unique player powers, a board that players construct differently each game, and 5 ways to build your engine. You'll be encouraged to plan ahead, but required to adapt your strategy in order to come away victorious. Okay, moving on to Game 3 of the games that are funding this week. This is going to fund on March 23rd. It is called Claw of Sauria. This one had a funding goal of $10,000. They're currently at $46,000. And this is an expansion. It's an expansion for a game called Sauria, which if we go and look at that, over on Board Game Geek, we can see that it's got an 8.3 rating, which is probably the reason that I'm highlighting it here. It's for 1 to 5 players. It's got a weight of 3.13, which I would call a medium heavy game. It falls under the category of adventure, animals, exploration, and video game theme. And it has mechanisms that include action points, dice rolling, events, hexagon grid, hidden victory points, map deformation, player elimination, push your luck, rolls with asymmetric information, semi-cooperative game, and variable player powers. It also has standees, dinosaurs, and dice with icons. So in the base game here, players are vying to complete as many of their individual goals as possible to gain victory points and then successfully reach safety before time runs out. While this is happening, they must also survive various dangerous dinosaurs that are out to get them. Players take on the role of 1 of 8 unique characters, ranging from the Ruthless Hunter, the Friendly Ranger, or the No-Good Saboteur. Each character has a specific set of goals that no other player knows. The player who gets the most victory points by completing goals and escapes the island wins. So, here's a quick look at some of the base game stuff. Actually, let's go the other way. So you've got standees for the dinosaurs, your different players, your different characters. You've got this kind of like hex grid with tiles on it. All right, so this is an expansion, Claw of Sauria, and it's going to add a co-op mode, new dinosaurs, new characters, a new hybrid dinosaur, and more. So here's what this looks like now. It is published by Million Games, who obviously did the first campaign was for Sauria, which means since they've only created 2 campaigns, this is all they've done. So that does put the risk a little bit higher, but they did deliver Sauria, and it has a fairly solid rating here. 8.3 is nothing to sneeze at. There's some videos, if you kind of want to watch some videos on the campaign page. Dice Tower has one with the playthrough. But, it kind of feels like Jurassic Park, right? Except that instead of building or controlling a park, you're human characters interacting with this. You're in amongst the dinosaurs and trying to achieve goals and do things. So it's a different take than we've seen before, because Dinosaur World exists, but then there was a game called Dinogenics, but that kind of was very similar to Dinosaur World, where it was also building a park, kind of vermanaging a park. This feels more like adventures in a park. Okay. So let's just take a quick look at the pledges. If you just want to get the new expansion, it's $35. Let's let's see. Shipping on this is going to be to the US, $19. So $54 for just the expansion. If you want the base game, you're looking at, with shipping, $88. Now here you've got a sort of all-in bundle for the expansion. So you've got the expansion, you've got standees and miniatures, and the Sauria's Secrets, which is a special box that adds in items and a lore book. So this one will cost you $106. And then down here we've got a bundle that includes the base game and the expansion. You're looking at $115 for this. Now over here you've got an even richer bundle that has the expansion with all of these standees, all of these miniatures, standees and miniatures for the base game as well, the map, dinosaur profiles, but recognize there's no base game in this, right? So it's just the expansion with all of these standees and miniatures. And this one's now, you're looking at $139 for that with shipping. This is going to be the biggest pledge. So this will include everything, all the standees, all the miniatures, but it'll include the core box and the expansion. And so this is kind of everything. This is basically the all-in. And for this one, you're looking at $211. So there's different price pledges you can experiment with this depending on your interest level. You've obviously got very expensive pledge levels that include miniatures and standees, but if you just want to get the game itself, you can go down here and get something and pledge more in the $100 range. But I think for me, the big recommender for this is simply the fact that it's doing something a little bit different from what we've seen before with dinosaur games, and the base game has a fairly good score. All right, from there we go to From the Moon. This is a Euro game. It's from La Butte de Jeu. It's got 5 days left to go on the campaign, so it's going to also complete on Thursday. They had a funding goal here of $37,000. They're currently at $103,000. And this is, set on the moon. And players are going to have these figures that they'll be putting in these rovers. There are these tokens that can go in the rovers' back. I mean, the figures' backs. You can see this. I feel like component-wise, it's pretty neat. And this is kind of like an engine-building Euro that you're going to be playing. There's some player boards, double layered, which is always good. Okay, so if we look at this one over here, another big thing about this one is the art. So the art on this is by Miguel Coimbra. He's done a lot of stuff. Seven Wonders Duel, Seven Wonders, Cyclades, Small World, Battle Lore, Zombicide, Outlive, Hyperborea, The Others, some of the Tiny Epic games, The Reckoners, When I Dream, some Small World stuff, Game of Thrones, the card game, Rift Force. So Miguel Coimbra has done a lot of stuff and has really great art. This is in the category science fiction and space exploration. They don't really have very much over here mechanics-wise, but they describe the game on the BGG page as, in From the Moon, players are representatives of factions trying to complete space missions departing from our moon in order to help humankind survive elsewhere in the galaxy. Indeed, the fate of the Earth is sealed and time is running out. The plan is to launch 3 survival missions before all life on Earth ends. To do that, each faction will contribute by building parts of the ships and build their own lunar base to store the necessary resources. In the end, which faction will be most suited to lead the future of our race out there far away in space? So that's what's going on with this one. It is this kind of engine building game, bit of a race because you're trying to build all the different things for these missions. But I'm sort of intrigued by this one, and I like Euros, and I like some of the physical design of this. Now, if you want to back it, there's basically just one pledge level, unless you're in France and you're going to do a local pickup. So you'd be pledging this pledge level, shipped to your home. It's with shipping, $77. So, I mean, there's a bunch of videos here. If you feel free to take a look at this if you want to see more about it. But this is an engine building. I think it's like a medium weight Euro. And if you're curious about what else this publisher's done out of France, I think their big things are It's a Wonderful World, It's a Wonderful Kingdom, and Netatanka. They've published some other things too because they do French translations of other games. But those 3 games that I just mentioned are the 3 that they've really developed and published on their own. Okay, the final campaign that we're going to look at is called Soul of Ankiril. This had a funding goal of $21,000. They're at $17,500, so they haven't funded yet. But as I say, usually they do about a third. Campaigns do about a third of their funding in the last 24 hours. So I'm pretty certain they're going to get over this. This campaign is going to finish up on Friday. And this publisher's only done one other campaign before. So, generally that's something to be a little more wary of. It was for this, wasn't even really a board game. It was for a role-playing thing called Bloodsword. But I do like the look of this campaign. It's kind of an abstract war game. It reminds me a little bit of War Chest. How to play. Choose an element and create your deck. Connect the boards. Cast spells and summon creatures. Reach and deactivate the 3 emanation portals. So it's definitely like a head-to-head contest, almost fighting game, but using the mechanics of this game. And I like a lot of what I've seen. I like the design of it. I like how it's a war game and it's a fighting game, but like War Chest, it's also kind of more abstract. And I like what I've seen with like the interplay between the cards and the tiles. So if you're thinking about backing this one, you've got a couple different pledge levels here. You've got Initiate of Water and Fire, $37. Then you've got Initiate of Metal and Wood, which is also $37. And you can also get Initiate of Earth and Fire for $37. So any of these standalones are $37. And each one's going to come with 2 different elements where you can just, fight together head to head. But if you want the whole shebang, or you want multiples, you can pledge for all 3 versions or 2 versions, and then you'll have more flexibility, you'll have more variability, and because each one has its own element, its own deck of cards. So if you get all 6, you can pledge this high level here, Warden of Ankiril. It's going to come with Initiative of Water and Fire and Metal and Wood and Earth and Air, plus a slipcase for all 3. So that would give you the most flexibility, and that way you'll have 6 different factions essentially that you can choose when you're playing against your enemy. Now they also have this Master of Temen pledge, which is going to include an expansion set and some miniatures, a soundtrack. But here's kind of what the different things look like. Here's the slipcase if you're getting all 3. And then if you get the Master Edition, I think it's cool because you got trays, right, for the different tokens and the cards. So that makes setup and teardown really easy. And it's also easy to kind of choose what you're going to play. But this version will come with some other stuff. Unique spell cards and these miniatures. And this Forgotten Tribes expansion set. Plus solo mode. So there's a lot of room to kind of customize this to what you want. If you're just want to get your feet wet, you can get one set of 2 things. But if you've really gone and looked at the videos, if you watched some gameplay, if you've managed to play yourself, maybe on like Tabletop Simulator or something, you might want to go deep into this and kind of get everything. But I think this looks pretty cool. So this is the last of the 5 campaigns I just wanted to make you aware of before it finishes funding next week. Soul of Ankiril completes its funding on Friday. Thanks for joining me today as we look through the campaigns that have launched in the last couple days and also look ahead at what's going to be wrapping up funding next week. Now, I do these videos 3 times a week. The video I put out on Wednesday is usually the longest because it has the most campaigns, since the most campaigns generally launch on Tuesday. But the next video that I'll be putting out will come out on either Monday night or Tuesday morning, and that will cover all of the campaigns that launched over the weekend. Now, often there aren't a lot. And so I'm now doing a second section in that video, much like I've got the second section here looking ahead to campaigns completing their funding next week in these Friday videos. But the second section I'm doing in those videos are just kind of talking about the games that I personally have played in the last week. It's my way, until I launch more content, which I'm working on behind the scenes, it's my way to kind of keep a conversation going with you guys in terms of what I've been playing. Now, this week was my birthday. I got to play a few games with Kristen, my wife. We played Fog of Love, we played Astro Knights, and we played Stardew Valley, the board game. So I'll be talking about all three of those in that first video, the first crowdfunding roundup that'll be published next week, Monday night or Tuesday morning. And I have a kind of a heavy Euro game group that's meeting this weekend, and we're going to be playing Tiletum and Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. So in next Tuesday's video, I'll be looking at all the campaigns that launched over this weekend, and then I'll also be talking about those 5 games, describing my experiences with them, my thoughts about them, and giving each of them a preliminary score. So come back and join me for that video. In the meantime, have a great weekend, play lots of great games, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.